What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Tennis and Bagels podcast. My name is Andre. It's the clay season finally, after all the hardcore seasons that we've had, after Australian Open, Miami, Indian Wells, you name it, we finally are here on the red dirt. And Monte Carlo is the first ATP tournament on clay of the season. It's the first Masters 1000 on clay of the season as well, first big tournament on clay. And there's one very important thing that could happen. And I think we are probably closer to it than we were anywhere near to it in Indian Wells and Miami. Indian Wells probably a little bit closer, but this tournament, I think we are very close to it, especially after today, after the results of what happened. We might finally get the first 2026 installment of the Sinner and Alcaraz rivalry. That's right. They first posted very, very impressive scores today, 6-3, 6-1 for Alcaraz over Baez, and Sinner beat, I forgot his name, but 6-3, 6-love was a pretty convincing, victory. And maybe a few of the issues that, I don't know, people might be thinking about in terms of Sinner's capacity on clay could have been just completely, erased after today's results. 6-3, 6-love after just a turnaround from Indian Wells, Miami on hard, especially Miami being pretty fast scored, to clay. And then he just kind of brings up this incredible, very dominant result as he just basically business as usual for him. Doesn't really change which surface is playing, which could be interesting because, well, we always think Carlos is the better clay court player. I personally think he actually is the better clay court player, but it doesn't mean that Sinner isn't great. If we can remember just for a second what happened last year, Sinner was just 1 point away from a 3-1 win over Carlos on at the French Open. So that's obviously not nothing. It took Carlos just really hitting, 110%, like just grabbing every single ounce of his talent to beat Sinner on that match. And then Sinner just didn't have answers in that final tiebreak. And maybe we could have the first time that they've played each other in this season. It could happen here in Monte Carlo. And I think it'd actually probably be really important, I would say, even for the number one battle, which I think is just going to intensify just immensely. It's just going to hit just going to be at full power until probably the end of the season, just because they have so many points to defend. They basically won every single big title, except for maybe Shanghai. Madrid was Casper Ruud, but none of these guys played in Madrid. After Monte Carlo, if Sinner wins, he becomes world number one. He overtakes Carlos as the world number one. And if Alcaraz beats Sinner in the final, I haven't done the calculations yet, but I think he probably maintains it because he's about 1,500-ish points. Not really, actually probably more like 100, 1,100, 1,100 points above Sinner in the 52-week ranking. So yeah, and I think it's just going to be this back and forth because Carlos has Rome and Sinner is in the finals has final points to defend. Sinner doesn't have points to defend in Monte Carlo, so that's to his greatest advantage. And then obviously we know that Alcaraz has the French Open points to defend and Sinner has the finalist points to defend. And then we have going to the grass season, Sinner has final points, not final, but like winner points to defend in Wimbledon, and Carlos has the finalist points. So it's just really going to be this back and forth until the end of the season. It's basically really tough to know. It just really comes up to who reaches the most finals and who wins the most titles, especially if the other one is also reaching finals. And, if they kind of just get to meet in finals of tournaments, that's where it's going to be at. And I feel like when I say that the battle and, could really take up to its full potential, it's just really because this entire season, all the big titles were won by one of Alcaraz and Sinner, and a few other important titles here and there. Doha being the one being won by Alcaraz, and of course Sinner winning the Sunshine Double. But they haven't faced each other. They came close in a few times. Sinner obviously losing an epic to Djokovic in Australia, and then Alcaraz losing to Medvedev. Obviously, he wasn't playing at his 100% best, but Medvedev was playing probably one of the best matches I've ever seen him play, especially against Alcaraz. And then, it just kind of he got denied. So Sinner and Alcaraz did not face each other yet in 2026, so they're just sweeping the titles, which kind of keeps confirming just the assumption that it's between them two. It's hard to imagine that somebody can stop both of them in the same tournament right now. And one interesting, probably the most telling of the facts that I kind of compiled for this is that for all of the big tournaments of this year, either one of Sinner and Alcaraz has beaten Zverev in the semifinals to win the tournament. So Zverev has not been able to stop any one of them. He hasn't been able to stop neither Sinner nor Alcaraz on the way to the finals, which makes it even harder for anyone to, see him taking on them both and, beating Alcaraz and Sinner on the way to a big title. That's going to be a really, really big task. Djokovic, you would say he probably got somewhat close to. It's hard to see him doing that as well, especially because of his age. I don't know if he is able to maintain of that level. It's just going to be a question of how he's feeling on that day. Zverev, having been to those semifinals and not being able to actually take the wins, it's going to be very interesting to see what he's going to try and do, because there is also the point where, for example, in Miami, where he faced Sinner, and it was a pretty big match. He had really good chances in that one, and if he had the win, he would have probably taken the big title, and it would have been quite a statement from him, because it's also begs the question that whether somebody can also not beat, if somebody can beat both of them in the same tournament, if Zverev can at the very minimum beat one of them and just keep taking advantages of these situations, he can put himself in that race. He can put himself up there in those big moments, because even if he is not able to defeat both of them in the same tournament, he's still one of the most consistent players on tour. So it's like Sinner and Alcaraz have just reached a level where they're just above everybody else. But if it starts not really getting there, if they start not making the semifinals and the finals, they still have a bunch of points to defend. How long is this dominance going to go? We keep talking about big three and years of dominance and generational talents, which they are, but you never really know how long a career will actually last, right? And of course, Zverev is younger, but he's younger. He's older, and his time is a little bit past in that sense. He's 28 now, so but if he's putting himself in the conversation just as consistently as he does, will he be that threat? It's definitely the biggest dark horse, because in a sense, there's no favorite for any big tournaments except for Sinner and Alcaraz. But it's just, I was gonna put it in there that seeing Zverev reaching all the semifinals that he does and losing, not always comfortably, but most of the time losing to Alcaraz and Sinner, does leave that door a little open, because they might not make it, right? They might not make up to the finals and those ends of the tournament. But the conversation is still very much centered around Alcaraz and Sinner, and it would be really beneficial for all of us from an entertainment point of view, from a battle for number one point of view, for tennis analysts. I'm not sure. Everybody would benefit, I would say, a podcaster like me, tennis writers, from this one, match that could happen potentially between Sinner and Alcaraz. It would be really interesting, for example, if they were to reach the finals of, every tournament from now on that they played at the same tournament. Say, for example, probably Sinner is going to play Halle and Alcaraz is going to play Queens. So on grass, we're probably just going to have a chance to see them both playing each other at Wimbledon. But it's very likely, I would say, that they both play at least Rome before the French Open. I'm not sure if they're going to decide to play Madrid. Carlos has a bit more of a vested interest in this because he's Spanish, so he probably will try to make it. He's played the tournament before and has won it. For Sinner, obviously, he has the vested interest in Rome, so he will probably try to be more fit for that one. But also, Rome is the more important tournament regarding the French Open, because it's kind of the most similar in terms of conditions. So Alcaraz would try to peak for that tournament and not so much for Madrid, I would say. I'm not exactly sure what would be in his mind. But imagine if they both play all the tournaments, all the big tournaments, like say Monte Carlo and then Madrid and then Rome and then the French Open. If they play in those tournaments and they reach the final in every single one of those, I think that's going to be extremely telling and for the race and just like really for the history books. It's just going to be full on entertainment. It's going to make some of the weeks of the tournaments a little bit less interesting just because it's like, well, we're just basically expecting for the final at this point. But at the same time, we had something similar to that when the Federer and Nadal rivalry, right? When they were just both of them just reaching the finals anyways. So if we could get to that point, at the very minimum, we have like a really solid narrative with really, really big rivals and just see, just the dominance between just really, you could say like all this, like the duality, the yin and yang and whatnot. So it would be interesting if they do that, but we have to start somewhere, and Monte Carlo, I am hoping, is going to be the place where they meet in the final. I think we're due a match between these two guys. We're due to seeing if the changes that Sinner has decided to make in his game are going to have an effect in Alcaraz. We are due to seeing how Alcaraz is going to start facing Sinner from now on as well, because, well, he can't be winning forever, or can he? We don't know how fit mentally he is after the Australian Open. He seems to be pretty excited about the clay season, so yeah, but we need to see that. Like this is the rivalry that really is the barometer for who is truly the best player in the world. Like, they have to be beating each other. Of course, Sinner is going to beat everybody else on tour, and Carlos is going to have some trouble here and there in some early rounds and whatnot, and somebody is going to just raise the level against him. But most of the time, we're going to be expecting these two to, be the favorites in every match that they play. And we need to see whether there's a difference in dynamics in between these two in terms of their rivalry. Who's better now? Was there a difference? And since we haven't had a single match between them since the ATP finals last year, then we are kind of pretty starved for that. And it's going to really be important to feed the narrative, because fans kind of need it. Otherwise, it's just going to be kind of two tours running in parallel, like the Sinner tour and then the Alcaraz tour, and it's just like going to be parallel world #1s just because they never really face each other in tournaments. So it will be just based on a technicality in terms of, they just made more points, or this guy just didn't play that tournament, so he lost #1 because of that. So that's not really interesting, right? So it's definitely important that we see that #1, I guess not #1, but like that rivalry, come alive again. It's important to keep this narrative going. It's important for everybody, for content. So let's just hope they get to that final once and for all. It's been too long. And backing down a little bit from just the top of the game, there is a guy that I've talked about him a few times here, and I have a vested interest in him because I'm Brazilian, and Joao Fonseca is a big talent that, keeps getting hyped up and then hyped down, and it just is overhyped, and then he's like underhyped, and like, no, he's actually the big deal. He's actually not the biggest deal or whatever. So yeah, like there's a lot of talk around Fonseca, even if it's not as good or as good, but the fact is that he's there, and he played good tennis. He played really good tennis against Sinner. He played good tennis against Alcaraz as well, all things considered. And he's not on the path to meet neither Alcaraz or Sinner in Monte Carlo in the earlier rounds, which could be beneficial. But that's definitely something that I've been thinking about. We saw him play against Sinner in a slow hard court and Carlos in a fast hard court, and it could be cool to see them facing each other in other surfaces as well, right? Clay is a really important part of the season. I don't know how Fonseca is going to do on the grass. Normally, players tend to take a little bit longer to develop. He's pretty good. He's got the tools that would be pretty transferable, but it still takes some, know-how and just understanding how to play on the surface. Whereas in clay, he's a lot more developed. He's won titles on clay before. I guess he's won his first title on clay in Buenos Aires last year. So he's a more seasoned player, I would say, on clay. He's probably more comfortable. He's played his in his life growing up on clay. Definitely trying to push back and pushing his game to be more performant on the hard courts, because it's like 70% of the tour is on hard courts, so kind of have to be good on that surface. But it would be cool to see him play Alcaraz or Sinner. But it's actually better. It's more beneficial for him, and I would say for everybody else, analysts, to see Fonseca playing other players on clay and seeing if he can win other matches as well. Because, well, you're not going to be facing Alcaraz and Sinner every other round, right? And especially if he goes up the rankings, then the possibilities of, them playing matches are going to be a little bit more scarce. They're going to have to go deeper in tournaments, right? So it's an interesting point right now if Fonseca is in the semifinal clash path against Sinner, and obviously finals against Alcaraz, should it go that far ever. And I really, really want to see Fonseca also playing other players in the top 5, top 10, really. I want him to play Zverev. I think he could be a very interesting matchup against Zverev as well. Zverev probably will be feeling very comfortable, and he's going to not play his normal pushy self that he would play against Sinner and Alcaraz. So it is going to give Fonseca and his fans and analysts and whatnot a good view of, how would Fonseca play against other styles, and especially on clay if he gets to face Zverev in this tournament. So yeah, I did go on this tangent, even though technically this content is all impartial. Try to be as much as I can, but I'm human, and I also am a fan of a few of these guys, and I like Fonseca, and I think it's important to talk about him because who knows, maybe he's actually going to be the next world number 3 and the next chaser of his generation. So yeah, and I just want to talk about him. This is my camera and my microphone. I do whatever I want. No, I'm just kidding. But anyways, and just because I've been, just mentioned somebody out of the blue, there's no big tournaments on the WTA right now. There's a series of 500 events that are going to be happening up until like Madrid and Rome, and more 500s. There's a lot of 500s in the WTA right now. And I've mentioned Iala before. I think Iala is an interesting player that I've cited, that I said I want to see how she does on clay. And I'm not going to talk too much about her right now. I'm just going to just leave it out there, just because I'm also kind of trying to track some new talent and whatnot. But she plays a match today. It's going to be a little bit more harder to, I don't know what to assess, what she's doing, especially because of this series of 500s. There's the field varies quite a bit in between them. So I'm just going to save more comments on her for when we reach 1000 level, and I think that's going to be more interesting to talk about this new talent. And it's going to be interesting because also we are going to be seeing more players like Sabalenka and Swiatek and Coco and Rybakina, and seeing what they do. And Yala is also lower ranked enough that she could be in the path for early rounds against those players. So it's a wait and see. I want to see what she does before I draw any more comments on her from now on. And yeah, but yeah, and since I'm talking about the WTA, there is one interesting point that I've already mentioned in terms of all the 500s, is that there are 10 1000 events in the WTA calendar right now, and 8 of them are on hard courts. There are 2 1000 events on clay, those being Madrid and Rome, which is an entire month of the calendar. Since now it's 2-week Masters events, or 1000 events in the case of the WTA. But I do think that there is a good space to have a Masters event. Why not this week, right? I mean, Monte Carlo is happening, so why not have a tournament like that for the WTA? And I was just kind of doing some digging about it and just thinking, where could they have that? Because it really does already feel like WTA players are already treating the calendar as if you already had a 1000 event on clay. That event being Stuttgart is always stacked. Players really, really feel like they want to win that tournament. It really gives a good feel for them just coming in after the hard court and just kind of take some time to get it going, just take a few weeks off to practice and go off to, their training camps in order to, readapt to the surface and relax a little bit probably. Swiatek is training with Nadal right now, which is a very interesting point in her career. Just she parted ways with Facet and now training with Nadal. What's this going to look like for her? She definitely seems to be trying solutions. Is Nadal the better solution for her? I don't know. But back to the clay situation in Stuttgart is that it's always so packed and it's a 500 event. And I think I've asked this question before on Twitter, and I asked, could Stuttgart just become a 1000 event, right? It's not going to be the best solution. It's indoors. The stadium is not as big. I don't think it has. I think the answer was mostly just that Stuttgart is just not big enough to hold a 1000 event for the criteria that the WTA has, which I am not aware of. I just don't know what are the criteria that they have. I could probably find it somewhere, but I just didn't really have the time to research that. But the point is that there is one place that should get the limelight. They should go back to its glory days. And this place is Hamburg. Hamburg is a tournament that, has a lot of history in terms of big names and big tournaments and big matches. Used to be an ATP 1000. It was immediately chosen as one of the 1000s, one of the premier events on the ATP. It already had like other names in the past. So it has... Hamburg has a big stadium, has the capacity to house a 1000 event. It has a retractable roof, so if rain is not really going to be an issue even. So, just all of the ingredients are there. I don't even know why they don't choose Hamburg at all for any of their, circumstances in terms of 1000 events. If somebody has that information, I would love to know it, because the tournament, it seems to be trying its best to stay alive and just... It used to be for the WTA, just backing up a little bit in terms of history. WTA has some good history in Hamburg. Steffi Graf has won this tournament 6 straight times. Of course, she's German, so she has an interest in just playing in front of her home crowd. But still, 6 straight times, she just decided to go there and play. And then also other big names like Venus Williams, Kim Clijsters, Martina Hingis, Arantxa Sanchez Vicario, Conchita Martinez, coach of Mirana Andreeva. So it has big names. It has a lot of good matches that have happened on those grounds. So they have the know-how, they have the stadium, they have the experience, they have the history. They just have everything to house a 1000 event. And right now, on the ATP side, it's wedged right the week before Roland Garros. It just makes more sense. Before, it used to be a 500 that was held after the US Open. So just kind of that weird mini clay season post grass. And now just decided to bring it back to make it a little bit more, I guess, important in terms of the season narrative that they're trying to build. And the WTA is still like in this weird place. It got downgraded to 125 at some point. He spent like 20 years without a WTA tournament on the, on the grounds of Hamburg, and it became a 125 event. The WTA 125 played in a stadium that can house a 1000 event. You can imagine like just the discrepancy of this, just the contrasting situation, and also the money situation, which is pretty bad for them. And now it's a 250 that's held in July. I think just before the hardcourt swing as well. It's still like wedged in this like dead zone between Wimbledon and North American hardcourts. So there is space. Like right now, they are having Linz on at the WTA side, and Charleston was last week, and on clay as well, like the green clay that they have, I believe is like Hartrue or something. So this week, where Monte Carlo is happening, and it's a clay tournament, it's a premier clay tournament, it's internationally known. It's also not a mandatory event, and it's played over just 1 week instead of the regular 2 that every other ATP 1000 event is doing right now. But it could be here. We just have the space. We have the stadium. It's not being used right now. Of course, like it's going to be used, so they're probably prepping for it. but I'm not sure. I don't know what would be the logistics behind it, but I would say that probably the people in Hamburg, especially the tournament directors, who, by the way, were trying really hard to not get downgraded to a 500 back in the day in 2000, and I believe 8 or 7, when it was last held. And I think they would definitely welcome a premier event, like even if it's not a mandatory event on the WTA side. It's a 1000 event. It would definitely bring players like Sabalenka and Swiatek. It could probably make Stuttgart suffer a little bit in terms of its field, but it would definitely become some sort of Barcelona style. Like you would approach a little bit more of like the ATP calendar, which by no means is perfect, but I think that the clay season and in the ATP calendar is just a little bit more polished than the WTA's clay season. And that lack of that one extra 1000 event on the WTA, I think it really makes us suffer in terms of, lack of big tournaments on clay. It's a really big part of the season. It's a big surface, it's an important surface. And, it's just good. It's different just to watch tennis being played on that one. It makes it totally different, right? And right now the clay season is kind of not so alive until you reach Madrid and Rome, and it just kind of like burns like a flash in that sense. So yeah, I think Hamburg would be a pretty solid choice if they ever bring a clay court 1000 event to the WTA. That being said, there are complications that this would bring, which is the fact that, as I said, there are already 10 1000 events on the WTA side. If we added another one, which I don't think they're just gonna like boot any 1000 event out of the calendar for that one, they're just gonna have 11. 11,000 events is a lot of tournaments. And as far as my research went, it looks like all the 10 events, all the 10 1000 are mandatory events. So, which on the contrary, on the ATP side, they have Monte Carlo, which almost got downgraded to a 500, but they were able to lobby for their place in the calendar to still be a 1000 event, which I'm really happy for. And it's not a mandatory event, so that's great. That's great for ATP players that they don't have to play Monte Carlo and they just take more time to rest, especially if they're not quite as good on clay. They can try and like do something else, like, with the time, just like take more time to practice and not risk injury and stuff like that. But 8 mandatory 1000 events on the ATP versus 10 mandatory events on the WTA is pretty wild. It's a lot of events. Players have been complaining about way too many events. On top of that, they have to play 6 500 events. So just take one of these out, one of these mandatories or whatever on the 500, and add another clay event. And I don't know, like basically, since I've already drawn the comparison between the ATP calendar and the WTA calendar, and I said it's a bit more polished, Hamburg could be the non-mandatory clay event, and then you could have, I don't know, maybe the same amount of tournaments that are mandatory for the WTA. It could be like 8 mandatory events and then 3 non-mandatory events. Whichever these ones are, I don't know. But at least I think Hamburg could be one of these, and it could be held in 1 week as well. They already have a few. They didn't go all the way in changing all the 1000 events into 2-week masters, 2-week 1000s. I guess they don't call them masters in the WTA side. But yeah, I think it would be a good addition. And even if it's not mandatory, I would say it's still probably going to bring a lot of great players to it. You see Monte Carlo is still thriving. Nadal was playing that tournament all the time. He's like an 11-time champion. He won 8 straight times this event. And then Sinner and Alcaraz are playing right now. They both decided to play on the clay right now. Sinner, I would say, probably decided to try his hand at it because number 1 ranking is really close to his grasp right now. But still, I think he would still choose to play it more often than not. And I think that would happen the same in the WTA side. And I think everybody is happy with this. I don't think any person in the world would be unhappy about a 1000 event on clay for the WTA side. And right now we kind of have this is not really balanced right now in terms of watching schedules, because we have obviously Linz that just happened, that is happening right now in Charleston that just happened. And all eyes are definitely more drawn to the ATP right now because we have this 1000 event. There's the possibility of the Sinner-Alcaraz rivalry reigniting with them with another final, which has the world #1 at stake. And there's not really anything on the WTA up until we get to Stuttgart, right? So I think that would be a pretty solid addition to the calendar to really bring more attention instead of just kind of having this long dead zone until we reach Stuttgart, and more importantly, even Madrid, because Stuttgart is important just really because we've been starved of so much of WTA action in terms of the best players in the world, and they always choose to play in Stuttgart. And if we had Hamburg, they probably would always choose to play in Hamburg. So that's basically my big ramble about changes in the calendar, which every single fan has ideas and suggestions, and nobody's really happy. And to be fair, calendar and the tennis scene is something that can always get improved. I guess in every sport, there's not a single person that is 100% happy with how things are going. And you can always keep improving. You can always do better, right? In terms of this. And of course, like, my opinion is not going to get heard by anybody up top. But if this were to happen, this is my 2 cents. I would be completely in favor of Hamburg becoming a 1000 event on the WTA calendar at the same week as Monte Carlo. 1 week event, please. Those are great. We need more of these, not less. 2 week events still feel a little bit of a drag. Maybe I'll get used to them, but it's a topic for another episode. So yeah, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Rolenberg Andre. Tennis and Bagels is at Tennis and Bagels official, which I've been tweeting more and more over there, by the way. You can also follow us on Blue Sky, which is also probably Tennis and Bagels. I never really remember, but it's all in the description. If you're listening to this episode, it's in the description of this podcast. If you're watching this episode, it's also in the description. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're watching it on YouTube. If you're on the podcast, make sure to toss me a follow and listen to every other episode. Thanks so much. I'm Andre, and yeah, super excited for what's to come in the clay season. See you guys. Bye.